Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Loren, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success brick by brick. Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. I'm Loren, your host, and today we have an awesome guest, Pam Fisher. Pam is a dear friend, lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, similar to me, and we have met and discussed business numerous times, and so I'm excited to have her on the call today. Pam has been investing in real estate for 13 years or so, has done a lot of different things, including entering into owning her own mobile home or manufactured home dealership. We're definitely going to talk about that. But Pam, thanks for joining us today.
Really, thanks so much for having me with you here. I always enjoy when we connect, and I feel like you and I, Loren, create our own mastermind just between idea generation and clarifications. And have you thought about this? So I love being a part of your podcast, and am super excited to see you moving in that direction, because I think you have amazing wealth of information to share with people. As I've told you before, I think you have 5 books in writing already, just a matter of doing it. So maybe this is your book version.
It's a process, right?
It is always a process.
Well, thanks for being on. So I guess I'll give you a little introduction about kind of who you are. Tell me who Pam is. How'd you get started? Where'd you come from? What drives you? Those type of things.
Sure. So I am an accidental investor, and I'll say that clearly, openly. I never in 100 years thought that I would be doing what I'm doing, but I love it. And I'm one of those people that have always had an abundant mindset. I don't know what I don't know, right? And this was not something on my peripheral at all whenever I went to school. I come from a rural background with blue collar workers and didn't know opportunity. So in school, I did communications and public relations and ended up doing event planning for many years, which I love, lots of moving pieces. And then I went on to be a nurse, an emergency room nurse specifically, and then got into software after management and worked with healthcare systems for many years. So the way I actually got started is probably a little different than some. I came from a little area in Moore County, North Carolina. It's known for Pinehurst, but I grew up on the other side of the tracks, if you will. And I had a family member come to me, and they were ready to be out on their own. They had a young child at the time. And when I started looking at what rent rates were in the area of Carthage, North Carolina, I was floored how much rent was. And she asked me if I would buy a house for her. And I said, no, that's not the way it works. But I ended up going on Craigslist at that time and found a 5-acre, 5-lot mobile home park that when I ran the numbers, it was kind of like, So I negotiated, not knowing what I was doing at that point, and convinced the owner of the 5 acres, 5-lot park to owner finance it with me. Reduced the price by $20,000, give him so much down, and he did. So that was my first tiptoe into that. And because it was a mobile home park, coming from a rural area where there are lots of double wide, single wide, a very common way of being in the rural areas, one of the lots had a burned out single wide on it. So we pulled that single wide out. So from the beginning, I was doing demo, didn't know the terms everybody uses at that time. And then we picked up a repo double wide at a very reasonable price. I moved it in. I let her pick what she wanted to do as a family member in there. So we painted it, we carpeted it, we put down linoleum, and they lived there for about 7 years. After 3 months of setting up the little park process that I had and a couple people moving out, because the previous landlord did not collect rents very consistently, right? I was cash flowing like $500 a month. And I said, hold on, wait. So I pay him, I get $500 a month in my pocket, and it's cash flowing. Let me do more of this. So at that point, I was digging really hard into bigger pockets, and they would talk about hard money lenders. Well, I didn't know where to find a hard money lender, and I'd go online and it was 30%. I'm like, no, right? So because of my other roles that I was doing at that point, I was really good and bad, if you will, at saving enough money to purchasing something. And in my case, the next few purchases were double wides and land and a park and such, but then not having the money to rehab. So I wasn't cash flowing, and I was kind of cash poor, as my CPA would often tell me. And a gentleman on a flight from San Diego to Houston literally helped change my view, because he basically sat there for 4 hours and talked to me about why do you care if you have debt if it cash flows. That was the entire conversation in 4 hours. If it cash flows, why do you care if you have debt? Because I was in the Dave Ramsey thinking that debt is bad. Don't have debt, right? And while debt is not always good, especially if you're over leveraging and you're not cash flowing on it, that dear gentleman's work to me on that flight is what I have moved forward with. And I got off that flight and signed up for my local RIA in Raleigh area. It was called TRIA, TREIA, Triangle Real Estate Investors Association. And I started attending every single meeting for the next year that I could get to. So we had about 8 to 10 meetings per month, and I connected, I learned, I met hard money lenders, I met lenders that are private, and that's how I got started. So it wasn't methodical and saying, oh, let me go step by step by step. I was craving the learning and was finding resources. I did a Robin Thompson class. I did a Vena Jones Cox class. I did a short-term rental class. Like I was just thirsty for knowledge, right? I did a manufactured home park class that was probably my best education at that time for me. And when I finished that class, I said, I want to purchase a manufactured home park between 75 and 150 lots within 12 months of that class. And 6 months later, I bought my first 74. So that's kind of how I got into it. Since then, I have remodeled many houses. I have owner financed a lot of houses. I really like that model. I like to find solutions and create opportunities, right? So whether it's someone that's behind on a home payment and they don't want to lose their house and mess up their credit, or someone that is in a state of life where if they get the cash, they're concerned that family members may take that cash. So we may work with them to provide them payments over time. And it's a win-win for me and them. We negotiate depending on what the property has. And then, when people talk about one thing, for a long time, I said my one thing was contracts, because depending on who I'm speaking to and what challenge they had, my one thing was figuring out how do we provide a solution to your problem, right? That's how I got started and have been moving forward, and I love it. So a long-winded answer there, Loren.
No, it's an awesome story, and I specifically want to dive into that first deal because my first deal was also a seller financing deal, but most people, they don't do a seller financing deal for dozen deals in, half dozen deals in, maybe never. A lot of the standard way is I'm going to buy a rental with 20% down, get a FHA loan or an investment property loan, and kind of take it from there. So you at that point, you hadn't done any classes or any courses. How did you know how to structure a seller financing deal, and how did you go about setting that up? And would you have structured it differently, knowing what you know now?
So the answer is I didn't know. I knew that it was in the right place. It was in my county and by my city or my rural country of where I had grown up. I am a relationship builder, just completely. And Loren, you know that about me, right? I like connecting people. I think that's the biggest gift of abundance that any of us can have is I may not have what you need, but I may know someone that can connect you and get what you need, right? So I sent a couple emails on Craigslist to this gentleman. And to be fair and honest, I'm actually surprised he was a person who responded to emails and knew about Craigslist, because he was a good old countryman, right? And I know my people that I love and my family that are good old country guys, they don't always know how to get on Craigslist and such. I finally had asked if I could meet him on site. We met on site, and there was nothing sexy or pretty about this little 5-acre park, right? I mean, it just wasn't. But when I meet with someone, I connect with them. We knew family members in common. We knew resources in common. We grew up in the same area, right? And, some people will call that the art of sales, but I say it's the art of being a human being and connecting sometimes. So I didn't even know I was doing that. It's just who I am, right? And then I was honest with them about what I could and couldn't do. I was like, I don't have the money you're asking for. This is how much I do have. Would you consider? And at that time, I nicely stated to him that there could be some tax benefits to taking money over time versus all at once. I certainly didn't know about the details of that. And I did the little disclaimer that everyone does that maybe talk to your lawyer, talk to your CPA, right? He had an option buyer from out of state and he really didn't want to do that, right? So playing into that local connection really was part of my piece. And then when I explained to him part of the reason why I was looking, right? He tapped into that with me. It was for a family member and they were looking at a place and I'd like to give it back to my local community. So he actually reduced the price for me. and then worked with me. So in this case, it was a local connection, and it was literally the ability to connect with him on what's important to him. Family, local, growing up in the country, and it worked in that case. I don't feel like I was, for me, anything I do, Loren, I've got to be able to sleep at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to live my life with integrity. Do I succeed every single day? No, I'm a person that makes many mistakes during my day. Sometimes I know I'm making the mistakes. Sometimes I don't until after the fact. But I'm not trying to be deceitful or anything with anyone. So I just was talking to him and told him what I needed and what I had. And it worked to my advantage.
So that's a great story. I think it also speaks to your ability to take action without maybe knowing all the answers, right? Because I know a lot of people that basically have deals that hit them straight in the face, but there's those tiny little things, like there's always uncertainty, right? And those bits of uncertainty can stop people. And it sounds like from the story that the uncertainty of, hey, I've never managed a mobile home park. I've never even had renters before. How am I going to collect rent? How am I going to fix things? How am I going to find tenants? How am I going to structure this? Where do I find a lawyer? Like, you took that all and figured, I'll figure that out as I go, versus trying to create a plan for every single nuance, which gets you stuck, right?
I will say that my need at that time probably superseded all the other pieces that you just said. My need was, I had a family member that needed a place to live, right? I knew what the rentals were in that area, and I knew logically she really couldn't afford that, right? So my need for helping someone in this case, i.e., my family member, pushed everything else to the side, right? She got half price rent in exchange for collecting rent. So, and then I'm cash flowing. I didn't expect to make money out of it when I was helping her. But thankfully, that abundant mindset really did come back and helped me. And gosh, to think, would I have done this without that first deal? I don't know. Once I saw cash flow, I'm like, how do I do more of this? Then I started the additional processes, right?
And this was, circa 2011. So we were kind of just starting to trickle out of the 2008 crisis, and things were
Yeah,
starting to trickle up, but we weren't going through the craziness that was of, 2021 or whatever,
that's
which
right.
is a lot of investors got in, right? And now
Yeah,
we're kind of stabilizing, and things don't look maybe as rosy as they did in 2001. Talk to me a little bit about, the economic cycles that you've seen in the last 13 years and how those have played into your overall strategy, and what you do and what you don't do.
sure. So if I'm completely honest with you, what I have done in the past, I haven't had a significant impact by the economy, if you will. And here's why. So I used to joke and say 20,000 for a manufactured home, and I could easily find it for 20,000 and less many, many times. Or some land with an old home on it is easy for me in the sense that I can afford to lose a $20,000 deficit if I had to, right? Nobody wants to lose. And gosh, so many gurus say, I've never lost money. Well, I don't know about that sometimes because there are deals that are too slender sometimes, and it is challenging, right? So in the beginning, I was very risk forward, but shy on the price tag, right? So I was okay to take a risk, as in this little mobile home park that I bought initially, but I was not comfortable with adding additional zeros, is what I would say, right? So I could buy something for 20,000, but you put another zero behind that and it's 200,000. And I'm like, hold on. So in the beginning, when I started, my investment was a lot slimmer than a lot of people going in, right? In Raleigh, for instance, which is where you and I are both tagging in from, that area, you really can't buy a home anymore for 300 or less. Very, very challenging. That scares me a lot. So unless I find a home that is significantly discounted or someone has a challenge that helps them, that I can help them with, I'm probably not touching that market at this time because that's still my comfort level, right? So my upfront cost was very low comparatively to other people. I have bought many, many homes for 20,000 and less. And when I teach and present, it's funny to me because I'll ask in the room, who's bought a house for 50,000? And people will raise their hand, and I'll get down to what's the least expensive. And I've gotten houses for free. Other people have gotten houses for free. And folks are like, you can't do that. Well, you can if you have the right circumstance. Is that going to be a house, Loren, that you want to move your family into? No. But does that mean that it's not an okay house? Not necessarily, depending on what you've done to it. I bought a third acre of land with an old house on it for $2,000 one time, right? So what I'm looking for is probably a little bit different than what some of folks are looking for, right? So my upfront investment was lower, which means that if I have to adjust rent, or if I have to pause rent, or if I have to pause if it's an owner finance and work with someone because they're buying it from me, I have a little bit more flexibility to do that than some people do when they have a payment that's attached to a 200,000 or 600,000 plus home, right? So I'm not going to tell you that I'm not impacted. When COVID came through, we had many of our tenants that were tapping into no payments for a while. And that was challenging because if you had a mortgage with a residential home, you could be deferred. But commercial mortgages don't get deferred. Private loans don't get deferred, right? So it was tight in that time period a bit, but I still had enough coming in and enough in reserves to make it through. Right? Was it uncomfortable? Sure, because no one knew how long it was going to go. I had one tenant that didn't pay for over a year and she got away with it, right? And then to get her out was challenging as well. So navigating through that and then learning to do things a little bit differently as a result of that. So a very long-winded answer again, Loren. Sorry.
No, it's great. I think maybe on the other side too, like when the economy was booming in 2021, like what impacts did you see on the manufactured home side? Because I know like that's about when I got into real estate and I was seeing everybody was moving towards, I want to do new builds. I want to buy stick built rentals. I want to, do all these things because the dream is you're a corporate job and you go buy this fancy, pretty rental house that you basically put a tenant in, you forget about for 3 years and the checks just show up. It's not what reality actually looks like, but that's what people leaving W-2s look at. Very few people look at like a mobile home park as they drive past and think, that's the thing that I want to spend my weekends and nights on, right? And dealing with that. But so talk to me about like when the economy was good, did you see less pressure from other buyers trying to come into that space? Did you see less renters? Did you see more? Like what was the impacts?
Sure. Unfortunately, I'll say unfortunately for me, right? Over the past 3 to 4 years, which is around the time frame you're speaking of, the market for manufactured homes has changed significantly because when everything went skyrocketing in Wake County, right? And even the remodeling folks couldn't still manage to spend $400,000 on a home to make 50, 60,000. Some of the resources I saw sticking to stick built previously moved into manufacturing. And even today, there's a lot of those folks that are still in manufactured homes. So what I saw was a shift for me in regards to who I'm working with. Parks are harder to come by these days as well because a lot of folks have come into that world. And while I don't blame them, it just makes it more challenging for me. Am I in a good place to sell? Sure, but I don't want to, right? So honestly, from my side, not a lot changed because I was still looking for owner financing. I'm still looking for opportunities to help people when they have a challenge. I did quite a few sub twos for various reasons like that. And then when we moved into various levels of remodels with stick built, I'm still not going above a certain threshold. I don't know that I, Pam Fisher, unless it is an apartment complex, a mobile home park, will ever get comfortable with going above $200,000 to $300,000 on a home, right? Ever. And that's just me and my philosophy, right? So I may not make as big cash returns as some of the folks who are doing the big high end things. When I see homes going for 1.5 up to $4 million in Raleigh, it blows my mind. I'm not touching that unless it's a multi of some sort. The other thing that I sort of moved into because I saw the need for affordable housing for the common person, if you will, is I started buying land and putting a retail home on there, meaning a manufactured home. And that's kind of what led me in. Last year, I did 12 spec homes and did well with most of those. Again, I learned a few lessons on that. And now we have the manufactured home dealership here because I saw the need for that. If someone has land and they can buy a home and place it on there, they already have collateral. There's beauty in that formula, right? But homes in areas that I see going for 3, 5 plus, we can potentially do a manufactured home in that area that's beautiful. And I mean beautiful inside for anywhere from 2 to 3 in that range as a double wide for 2,100 square feet. And it still becomes something that a family can afford with, especially with USDA, FHA, and VA potential sales.
Yeah, I think it's such a good option. I mean, you're 100% right. Like the house I live in has doubled in value in the last couple of years, and if I, had to buy this house the way we bought it, when 8 years ago, like we probably wouldn't be buying this house just because of the cost of living. And I see that at least in our market, the two big opportunities are going to be the low income housing because there's just a lot of people that just can't afford a $300,000 house, and then the high income, the luxury homes. Like the middle is getting squeezed. Everybody in the income is not keeping pace with housing costs, and so you're seeing more of those people. Either they have cash and they're moving up into nicer homes, or they have no cash or less cash and they're moving to what you're talking about. They buy a piece of land and then they put a manufactured home on it. And you're right, they are very nice homes. So I know that you bought a dealership recently and you're working on setting that up. Can we talk a little bit about like what the dealership acquisition process looked like, and then also what it looks like if an investor and or a homeowner wants to come in and either they have land or they don't have land? What's the time frame, approximate cost, and some of the steps that they need to have, and how much money do they need to come out of pocket to make that happen?
Phenomenal questions. And I'm going to go back to something you just said, that our incomes are not keeping up with home prices at all, right? And you said the same thing. I could not afford my house today. If I had waited, I've had my house for 20 years, and ironically, it was a foreclosure when I bought it. Didn't know about all that information back then. So absolutely agree with you that our salaries and the inflation in general are not keeping up with where we are with home prices. So I don't understand how newer folks get in and afford to live anymore. So that's part of what I'm hoping to help with over time. So the actual dealership itself came to me, I'm going to say is, I say the word as a fluke, but then, people aren't lucky. They go after opportunity and then they become lucky, right? You know that as well as I do, Lauren, with what you've done. So I had a home that was being delivered to a location, and for doing my spec homes. And just to clarify, a spec home is where I buy the land, I buy the home, I set up the home on the land, go through all the processing, and then get a certificate of occupancy and then sell that home as a retail sale. It's like a new home. So I had a
So just for our listeners, so when you say set up a home, like these homes are, you basically are putting a foundation down and then they're being hauled in and
Yes,
placed
correct.
on that foundation, connected together, and then hooked up to utilities.
Almost. For a manufactured home, you're not putting it on an existing foundation. You're coming in, and if you're doing it as a retail sale, you have footers, concrete footers in, and then they do roll the home in because it is on wheels and axles. And then a setup crew will actually put it together. There's something called a marriage wall that brings the two pieces together. And then we go through to the electric, plumbing, HVAC, a permanent foundation around it. Then we can sell it. So a modular home is set on an existing foundation. The manufactured home is you set up the home and then you build the foundation around it, but close, right?
So when people say mobile home, is that just another name for manufactured home, or is that another whole subset?
No, it's another name for manufactured home. And if you go into the history of manufactured homes today, the official word is manufactured homes. We've heard trailer, we've heard mobile homes. The stigma, the terminology is really challenging to change after all these years. But 76 was a significant year in the world of manufactured homes because there was a lot of changes that brought it under what's called a HUD code, which is a housing urban development. And that's when you had some additional requirements regarding the insulation, the stability of the home, the way that they're manufactured. And you have audits that go on in all the manufacturing plants. In the mid 80s, there was another upgrade at that point, and that's when we referred to them as manufactured homes. So while I don't think we'll ever finish or get rid of the words trailer and mobile home, today the official name is manufactured homes. And what I say all the time is the homes that we have today in manufactured homes, they're gorgeous. Some of them you walk in, you have no idea you're in a manufactured home at all. Compared to what I say of grandma's aluminum box, right? I've jokingly called them wobbly boxes before. And I even have a website called wobblyboxes.com. Sorry, let me see if I can. That I own and do some educational stuff with. But the homes that we have today they're made in the same factories as a modular home, right? And a modular home, the only difference is a manufactured home is guided from the housing urban development, which the HUD home, and that comes with federal support. Each of the states have requirements, and in North Carolina today, we are under the fire marshal, Department of Fire Marshal, So if you get a home that becomes a lemon, because, contractors sometimes become lemons too with this, you have the support of a state department that you can essentially call in with a complaint. And if the manufacturer does not come forward within a couple weeks to do what's requested of them, then there is a hearing that is created with a representative from your state, you, the dealership, and someone from the manufacturer that mitigates. And if they don't follow through on what is identified, they can shut down an entire factory versus a modular home is built to state code, which is great. That's what the general contractors deal with. If you've ever known anyone that had a lemon of a home that was built, they have to take that person to small claims court without any state backing of such. So I think that's another positive. In the end, the modulars and the manufactured homes are made in the same plant, basically, oftentimes, and it's just a matter of what the clarifications are in between. But our manufactured homes today have OSB wrapping, amazing insulation options. You can get up to 2x3s, 2x4s, 2x6s, depending on what you're doing for your joists. You're coming in closer to what the standards for housing is, depending on what plant we're getting it from and what the individual is looking for. So very different than what folks look at when they ride through the country and see that aluminum box, if you will, with the aluminum metal siding and the metal roofing, right? I still don't overlook those personally as a person for rentals, but what we have on our lot is not the same at all. So what we're having on the lot, and part of the reason why I decided to do this is there's just opportunity everywhere. And I am an abundant mindset person. So I had worked with 3 other investors in the past 6 months, basically, to set up homes and was testing my model to help other people. They all had successful setups. I did some JVs with some of them and worked through the process with them and was ready to take on more. And North Carolina, you're required to have 30 hours of a retail center in order to do that officially. And I don't want to get in trouble legally in any way. So I decided to set up the retail shop, which is 30 hours minimally a week, because I was offered the current dealership, which was in business for many years and shut down during COVID. It's in a prime location in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I even have 2 building mentors with me who I leased the building from. It's just the stars kind of aligned. And I'm a believer that sometimes when opportunity presents itself, if you don't take it, it may not present itself again in the future. And this was in line with my long-term goal, just not today. So now it's today and it's okay.
It's funny how often that happens, right? Is the things that you think are going to happen, 4 years down the road, all of a sudden it's not comfortable, but those opportunities come up today. And the thought is, do I wait for 4 years to meet the plan, or do I stretch myself and grow and take it now and know that you're going to be farther ahead if you do that versus waiting?
And it's that risk tolerance, right? I know a lot of folks that would be like, no way, I don't have all the answers. And I look at it and say, I've never known all the answers in life. And man, if I would have known them, it would have been boring. So
I mean, if anybody says they know all the answers, then they're fooling themselves, right? Because there's the things then there's the things you don't know, and then there's the things you don't know, right? And so you can't know all the answers because all 3 of those categories have to be fully filled out.
Yep. And I'm a big statement person of I don't know what I don't know, right? And when I look at my entire journey that I've taken in personal and in professional, gosh, if I would have known, I would have not been okay with some of the things. But I look back and today, every single one of my stepstones match up to be where I am today. They align, right? I have colleagues and friends that knew they wanted to be an engineer or knew they wanted to be a doctor and they knew that they wanted to be something. And they're some of the most miserable people I know because they knew they went to do it and then they felt stuck. And I've always said, I don't want to be stuck ever in my life. I don't want to be chained in any way, shape, or form to something, or the golden handcuffs, as they say, right? With you're so close to retirement, you can't afford to leave anymore. I was never that person, thankfully. So it's been a fun journey. I'm just different than what some would say, how you're crazy for doing all this. Maybe I am, but it's good. So
the argument to that is, well, you could be crazy for staying in the same job for 30 years, and then looking for retirement to sit around and golf. Like that sounds like hell on earth to me.
It does to me as well. It sounds, and I know that's not my personality, right? It's just not. I enjoy the flexibility that I've had. I've had some things in my life happen where I needed a lot of flexibility, and I couldn't imagine being in corporate America and not having that flexibility. So I'm grateful for my journey with the challenges, with the ups, the downs, the successes, the opportunities to learn as well, right? But I don't think any of it's accidental. And, when we talk about this opportunity that I have for this dealership, I don't think it's accidental. In fact, even when I was setting up homes on land, I had a big question looming about insurance. There was a time period when I'm like, okay, it left the dealers, it's been set up. Who's covering the insurance once it gets to my lot? And I got different answers from everyone, but I didn't get a clarification. And the first day I was here on the site where I'm located, I asked one of the folks that used to run this dealership that question. And she's like, oh, this is what you need to do. Here's who you call. I had spoken to at least 8 different insurance agents, and no one could tell me. So sometimes we get the answers in line with our next steps pending. And that's when I knew I was in the right place with the right people, right? It's good. It's good. So here's the thing about manufactured homes. I've worked with a few investors who's like, I've worked on tons of double wides. I'm good with manufactured homes. We ordered a home and I called them a few weeks later and said, so how's the permit going? And they're like, the permit? I need a permit. I'm like, yep, you do. And so they're like, oh, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. And then I called him a couple weeks later and said, so how's that permit coming? And he's like, I'm just going to mess this up. You just do this, right? So my reality is we're creating a customer experience with this process because it's not just ordering the home. It's, is the site prep done? Do we have sewer and water? Do we have any issues with trees in the way that we can't move at least a 14-foot wide long home into that property? Do we need to cut things? Do we need to move things, right? So behind me, I have a whole board up on the wall that has about 18 different columns. And some of the columns have 3 tasks on it of things that have to be done for us to get to the certificate of occupancy with this. So it's not very different permitting wise to building a brand new home. The difference is the home comes mostly together, and then you just have to do the putting it together through a setup there on site and then trimming it out with electric, plumbing, HVAC, right? And then a few other things that we get to. So, we can do economically affordable homes as a single wide in we'll say 60,000 range. And then we go up from there. My favorite home that I'm going to have on my lot, which is one that, is it the best decision from a financial standpoint? I don't know, but it's beautiful and I love it. And I think that there are going to be some folks that are going to come in and fall in love with it. But that's almost a $200,000 home, right? But it has the pot filler and it has stone accents and it has it's beautiful, right? Can you buy a stick-built home for $200,000 anywhere? Not that's upgraded like that. I can't, right? So that's a risk that I'm taking on my lot, but I like the idea of that risk. And at my worst case scenario, I'll move it to one of the lots I have because I'm still setting up spec homes myself, right? So we're looking for the customer experience to walk you through. If you come in and you don't have financing, we have financing options. We work through that process just like you're going into a mortgage bank, but we're doing everything with you. The whole process will be there to handhold you, depending on what your needs are, what your wants, and then what your financial capabilities are. We even have homes that we can set up with owner financing as a potential. We don't have a ton of those, but we do have a few that's an option as well, just because that's what I love to do is when I can provide a win-win-win and we can put a family in a home for money down and then we manage that mortgage. So we have options all the way across the board. We work with lenders like yourself, Loren, sometimes. And that's what your passion is these days is raising money and creating a fund and supporting different ways to do that. We work with a lot of folks that have money sitting in retirement and IRAs making minimum percentage rates. You know what that's like. And then we can turn that into a successful rate for them for investing and their hands off completely. As I say, I've got the hustle. I need the partnerships that have the financials sometimes. So we'll work through processes like that. For me, the big difference is I used to have a cell phone store. My niece was into a cell phone store back in the day. And we had a retail lot at that point. And that was interesting corporate entity stuff with US Cellular at that time, keeping inventory. So now I'm recreating a retail store, which I wasn't sure I was going to do that. My inventory is a bit more than a cell phone. A lot more, actually. And I'm working on setting up my center, my home center now, and working to find some resources to come in and support and help and be part of the process and the team. But it's all about that customer experience, which we'll do for investors, we'll do for individuals, and we can do for community owners as well. So there's also a duplex out there on manufactured homes, which I'm excited about because I see the concept of house hacking that we've heard about for so many years, that someone's starting out, they buy a piece of land, they put this single or double wide on it that has 2 units in it. They live in one side, and then when they're ready to move to their next level, they can. And it's not ridiculously priced for a duplex. So I see so many opportunities, and I'm really excited about the next steps here.
So for the dealership and for you in general, is kind of the vision to focus more on investors or focus more on homeowners coming in to place these, properties? And then like, what is the user flow, or what's the user experience look like? Do they come into the dealership, or is this, I'm gonna have a website where you can order it, meet a customer service rep online, do most everything remotely? And then what's the timeline between, hey, I'm committing to buying a house and I'm moving into my house?
That's a fantastic question. And the answer is yes. So because I had come from the investor world, I work with a lot of investors and will continue to do that. Knowing that investor needs are sometimes a little different. Some of them want hand holding, some of them just say, I just need it done, right? I will have at least 2 resources in-house that will be managing walk-ins. And that can be the typical homeowner that we're looking at. We have the ability for someone to order online. Depending on the person, not everyone's comfortable with ordering that higher of a price ticket, right? Without touching it, seeing, feeling it. So we'll have 8 homes initially on site. We're still working on getting those set up. So if someone wants to walk through, we have that opportunity at different price points, and we can also order. So we have the ability to work with investors. Mostly in the beginning, that will be working with me directly. And then we'll have the ability to work with individuals who walk in our show center as homeowners, someone that wants to do most of the process online. So we cover all of that. You talked about vision. What is your vision? The name of the dealership is actually VH Vision Homes, right? So Vision Homes was existing here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The location is 2965 Gillespie Street here in Fayetteville. And then our website is www.vhvisionhomes.com. So we're still working on some of those pieces, but there are opportunities out there to look and see now. The goal is to literally create the vision with whoever walks in our doors. I say we're creating the dreams. We make them come true. Because for some investors, this is a dream for them to set up and have duplexes or a park or a few rentals at somewhat of a reasonable way with minimum upkeep in the beginning. For some homeowners, I mean, we literally create the dream, and that's my fun part. The mom who gets out of an apartment and has her own house for her kitchen and her yard for her children, right? Or the single person who can afford to get out and do her first thing or his first thing. So I love working with individuals that are looking for the home experience and helping make it affordable and economically viable for them in today's market.
Awesome. And the timeline from, yep.
So the answer is it depends. So we will have a few opportunities on our lot here to be able to order directly. Oftentimes we do order directly from the manufacturing plant whenever we are placing an order. And depending on where it's coming from, it can be as quick as 3 weeks, as long as 4 months. So it honestly depends on which particular home. We'll have opportunities for Clayton, Champion, Destiny, Fleetwood, and eventually Live Oak. That's where we're starting with. So it just depends on which specific home, which specific features, which specific plant, and then the timelines for each of those plants. So long term, we'll look to have more homes on site to be able to select and take literally. As far as the prep for the actual setup, it depends. Do we already have land that's been bought by the buyer and cleared with water and sewer, or are we clearing that and putting in a well and a septic, right? That factor right there is anywhere from 1 week on up to 3 months, depending on where we are in location, right? The actual home itself, once it comes in, we can move through that process as quick as 3 weeks, but realistically, we say 6 to 12, depending on what else is on the table. We work with many selected vendors that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years combined, and those are our partners. So does it mean we could get it done quicker? Yes. But for my name, my quality, I want to make sure I'm using folks that I've worked with that I trust. And if that means waiting another 2 weeks for them to get us on their docket, I'd much rather do that.
So you're talking anywhere from 2 months to maybe 7 months top end, give or take.
We'll say not quite 7. Well, if we had to order one that was 4 months out, it would take 7 months. So yes, you're right.
Yeah. So which is approximately half the time of a stick built house, like building from the ground up.
That is right. That's right. And our permitting process is not completely different than what a stick-built house is. We represent and set the home up as on behalf of the homeowner if we're buying, or the investor, and then we get the home to the point of having a CO, or certificate of occupancy. There in North Carolina, there are multiple inspections, including a footer inspection, typically a marriage wall inspection, and then our mechanical, which includes plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. And then we have a final inspection. When we get to the final inspection, that's everything from grading to make sure it's not holding water in the yard, to the porch, to the driveway, to the mailbox, and to 4-inch letters that are on the home, right? So we get you to that point to be able to hand over those keys and be done. My quickest home I've set up ever was a total of 4.5 weeks from start to finish of the time having the home delivered. And that was a delay there with the foundation. Otherwise, we could have gotten that one done in 3 weeks. But that's about what our time frame is looking like.
It's fast. So, a lot of my listeners are investors looking to figure out how they can grow their overall wealth. And so, and I think that manufactured homes have a bit of a stigma. I know when I started looking at investment opportunities, I actually was very interested in manufactured homes because I knew that they weren't the sexiest thing, but I think that the most opportunity is often in the areas that people don't all want to go look at, right? Like if you want to make a lot of money, go start a garbage business or go start a business of something that is needed that no one wants to do. And so like from your perspective, like where are the opportunities for the different levels of investors being like, I'm just starting out, I'm willing to work, I've been in it for a while, I know how to run a business, I'm still willing to do some work, but I have some cash and I don't really want to do much work, but I have cash and I want to get a good return on my money. So where are the opportunities in your space in those three categories?
Everywhere. That's what I say. So, when I present and teach, I say, go take a ride in the country. Literally. Go look for the home that's decayed, that's almost fallen in. Because those homes have 3 things that are very important to any project that we do, whether it's a modular, whether it's a manufacturer, even building new if we wanted to do that at some point. Loren, do you know what those 3 things are? If it's an existing home, it's electrical, it's water, and there's sewer. So if you had a home previously or residence there, no matter what the condition of the place looks like, you have those 3 things to your advantage, right? So I say go take a drive and find those houses and then put an offer in on that house because you've got those 3 things. Double check, do we have a zoning allowance for manufactured homes? If so, we hit gold, right? The next thing I'm going to say is you start looking at what do manufactured homes sell in that area. If you can't find manufactured homes that have sold and or are on the market, then look at stick built and then look at about a 10 to 15% adjustment for the most part. Now, I am not an appraiser. I am not formally in every location of your listeners here. That is an average because the one piece that I think still surprises people is the stigma of manufactured homes is still there by far. But in many cases, my comps that come in are in line with stick-built homes when we're setting up these new homes. Even if it's batten and gypsum board and batten strips compared to drywall, they're coming in right in line with what the stick-built homes are. So we're coming along in a different way with the appraisals there. So older site that already has some type of home that may be demoed, structure for electric, water, and sewer, right? Get those inspected, and then zoning for manufactured homes. If you've got those check, and the pricing is within line, then you may have a gold mine there for this. I've split land doing it that way. I've bought raw land and fixed them up. You just have to know what your market calls for this. Some areas, if you're only getting around $120,000 to $150,000, unless you're setting up a single wide to rent, that's going to be a harder place to do. Most folks that are doing retail sales are looking for at least a double wide on permanent foundation. My justification for that is that's FHA, VA, and then potentially USDA funding as well, opportunities there, right? So that's the first thing I would say is go that route. If you're able to find any form of a park or you find one and you want a finder's fee, come to me. I'll take that park if it's in the right range. Happily will pay that finder's fee to you. Then the next piece is to upgrade your park, right? The third piece is go find one that is okay condition, buy it at a great deal, remodel a little bit, and rent it out. And then the next piece of what we're kind of referring to is become a joint venture. I have taught people by doing joint ventures with them. They bring the money. We split a profit along the way, right? And then the next piece would be to do totally hands off. And we have a fund that we're working through to be able to work and set manufactured homes up and either resell them or set them up at cost and then set them for owner financing and receive returns galore over time. So that's my long-term strategy that I'm looking forward to pushing out, especially having the dealership.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one of the things I've always struggled with manufactured homes, and I hope you can kind of debunk this, is I look at things as like, what am I going to get from a short-term cash flow standpoint and then in a long-term appreciation standpoint? And because manufactured homes, if they're not set on a permanent foundation, they're not considered real property. My understanding is they don't really appreciate, right? They're actually vehicles that depreciate. And so how do you balance that? Like, hey, I'm going to have this huge cash flowing asset, but I don't see the appreciation long-term. Or if there is appreciation, how do you calculate that? Because you can't run off of comps, based off of other homes in the area, or maybe you can.
So I'm going to answer that question in a different way than you asked me. So Loren, if you gave $30,000 for a home, we're going to even go simple, that's in a mobile home park, all right? So you're better at math than I am. I'm going to acknowledge that. So if you gave me $30,000 for a used home in a park, and I'm going to tell you that your rent that you can bring in total for that home is $1,200, but lot rent is going to be $400 of that. You're going to be bringing in $800 a month, right? You with me on that? That $30,000 investment, and I'm not calculating insurance, I'm not calculating your interest to be clear, is going to take you 37.5 months to pay off, which is 3.1 years. Do you have any investments that have paid you back in 3.1 years?
Not real estate investments.
Not real estate investments, right? So after 3.1 years, you have total debt-free cash coming in every month at $800 a month.
If you keep everything rented and you don't have repairs.
1,000%, right? So the other piece I would say that is buying at 30, owner finance it at 60 to someone, right?
Mm-hmm. And I've seen that strategy a lot from people that we know, right? Where they're buying double wides on brick foundations at pretty discounted prices. They have cash, they fix them up, and then they, sell them to, someone with an owner finance deal where they're maybe taking $30K as a down payment or $25K as a down payment. And then they cash flow those for the next 10, 15 years. And that person is a vested interest in keeping that property clean, updated, nice. And if they don't, then they get basically the house back. Basically, they can evict them.
So I'm going to give you my favorite deal that I've ever done. It was a probate. And just to clarify, a probate is where someone in the family has passed away and the family has the house, not sure what to do with it oftentimes. So in this case, this is a probate. Grandma had died 3 or 4 years ago. It was a double wide on 3 acres, permanent foundation in just say rural area, North Carolina, right? I met with the family. The home still had the Christmas tree up from when Grandma had passed. It had every piece of furniture that she ever had. Her closet was full. Like nobody had touched anything in here. They had 2 sheds out back. There was a tree that had fallen on the back porch, but it was literally just sitting on the back porch. It hadn't fallen through, right? So I asked them what they wanted. In the end, because of some driveway easement rights, which we got cleared before we purchased, I bought the home with 3 acres for $18,000 as is. Okay? I had a buyer that had to wait until we got the easement issues cleared out. So here's Pam math. I call this my cash flow formula, by the way. I bought it for 18. I sold it for 120,000 on owner financing. My buyer bought 25,000 to the table. I did have a consultant fee with someone that helped me find my buyer, so that has to be played in there. And at that time, because I actually needed some cash, I pulled in a lender who gave me $30,000 as well. So at closing, I got $55,000. I had $18,000 that we had paid out, right? That was already done. So I essentially put $35,000 into my pocket. I get $1,200 a month from this person buying it. My private lender gets $800 a month for 4 years. And then after that, I get $1,200 a month for 11 years, right? So $35,000 came to me at closing. $400 comes to me a month for 4 years. And then $1,200 comes to me a month for 11 years.
Wow.
I'll do that.
Let's not even talk about home runs. Let's talk about like 7 home runs in Game 7 of the World Series. Good grief.
So you tell people to go on past those little wobbly boxes and send them to me. I'll do that all day long. I love doing that. And I have folks say, well, did you clean it out? Nope, I didn't. I sent family members and friends in to say, go get what you want. Because there were some antiques in there. There was you name it. Tchotchkes, they still had photos in there of their family. I mean, it's simple. And then I sold it as is. So the family kept some of the beds. And again, whatever works for someone else. Not my problem at that point. I received photos 3 months later. And these buyers took this home to a level that I don't even know if I could have done if I had remodeled it. Their pride of ownership is so amazing. Like, it's gorgeous. Like, completely remodeled. And so people will say, well, what happens if they stop paying you? Well, if they stop paying me, I would try and work with them to get them up to paying, but I'm going to get a home that's so much nicer than what I sold in the first place. And I'm going to do it again, right? How is that a risk at some point when you do that? So that's my favorite, whatever you want to call it. And in my cash flow formula, that's a 7-time multiplier.
Pretty good.
Beautiful.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So the question I ask all my guests is, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give yourself as a 20-year-old?
As a 20-year-old, I would figure out how to be in the room anywhere and everywhere where there are real estate folks to start out with. No money, no whatever. It doesn't matter. Be in the room. Soak in like a sponge and then start talking to folks. Start talking to potential people that you see that are in a situation where they may need to sell something, right? Because when you're in a real estate room, typically you have people who have money, people who have deals, people who are buying houses, people who are remodeling houses. I say you have everything you need in your network. Your network is your network, right? But I would sit and be in the room. There's plenty of free stuff out there. Connect with a few folks, offer to support someone and go work for free for a day or two to learn with them, to remodel, to do whatever they're doing. Soak it up. And then as soon as you can, start putting money in your IRAs, your Roth IRAs specifically, because that's a lending source that you may not know about yet. And that's a way to make tax-free wealth over time. And then partner with someone as soon as you can. But learn. And then with what I know now and my personality, I would be door knocking. I would be and I've had people in the car with me that says, how do you do this? I'll pull over and say, hey, do you know who owns that house right there? Right. I would also start driving through mobile home parks and look for the vacant ones and figure out how to get those, because those are cash cows waiting on you when you can do it. So be in the room, network, offer to help other people to learn for your education, right? Like, I just think someone like you, Loren, if I could have tapped into someone like you when I was 20, and maybe you tapped into someone like me, gosh, we would be retired doing whatever we want to today, wouldn't we?
Which is probably still be working, but that's what retirement looks like for both of us.
For both of us, right? We don't have the ability to sit still like that. So be in the room, network. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. If you see something that looks interesting, as though it's abandoned or otherwise, stop and talk to somebody. You never know. And even if you don't have the money, if it's a good deal, someone will find that money for you. And I didn't understand that idea when I was much younger, but gosh, these days, absolutely.
I think I had this mindset a long time ago and I got over it, but so many people have the scarcity mindset around money. They think that there's only so much money in the world and that they have to try to get some for themselves somehow. But there is money everywhere, and people that have money, their main problem is, where do I place my money to make more money? And if you have the ability to find deals, create deals, structure things, and are honest and have integrity,
that's right,
you can go a long ways just by networking.
That's right. And you know, what I say is I have the hustle, right? I still have the hustle. You have the hustle in a different way, Loren, right? You've got many kids at home with you. I know you have the hustle, right?
So many kids. So
how many do you have? All right, that's enough. I have one. But meaning you know how to get things done, right? The hustle. Versus some folks who have money, they may have other careers. They may be in retirement. So what a perfect blend. Someone that has the hustle to get things done. I used to be told, how do you find your houses? I can't do that. I don't negotiate like that. My gift is gift of gab and relationship making. I know that, right? So I've learned to work with my gifts. So know your gift over time and then partner with other people who have the other gifts. I remember the first time I had a private lender come up to me and say, I want to work with you. And I looked around, I'm like, there's nobody else. I'm like, me? And they're like, yeah, I want to work with you. And I'm like, me? They're like, yes, I've seen you, right? People watch even when you don't know that they watch, right? They're looking for who you are, what you bring to the table, how are you as a person, right? The integrity piece is so important. The transparency piece is so important. So absolutely. Be in the room, though. Don't learn, and not execute. At some point, you have to take a step forward.
Rising tide lifts all ships. Action gets you where you want to go, right?
That's it.
Action plus consistency equals output.
Action plus consistency equals output. I like it. I'm going to write that down. And, I think both of us have an abundant mindset. I use that word a lot on purpose. I'm writing that down, output, because I think there are people that go, oh, I can't share this information because you might do the same thing and take it away from me. Okay. And I will tell you that in my world, people do it all the time. They come and they learn from me. I have people come up to me and say, I really took a drive to a park and I found a home and I sold it and made $10,000. Am I sad for them? Let's celebrate together. And I said, there's enough of the pie to go around. And then somebody told me that, well, there's not. There's limited pie. And I'm like, that's fine if that's how you think. But in my world, there's an abundance. I have never suffered from eating, but there's always enough of the pie. And I believe in kindness and giving back, because I wouldn't be where I am without some folks taking the generous time that they didn't have sometimes and spending with me.
Yeah, I think that the limiting factor isn't the number of opportunities out there. It's the number of people that are willing to take the actions and suffer the uncomfortableness in order to make those opportunities reality.
Absolutely. I've been in many uncomfortable situations and I've survived all of them, right? So that's right. Okay.
Awesome. It's been great having you on. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. And thank you again for having me on. I felt like you and I just had a lunch conversation, Loren, but it's been all about me. It's not all about me when we talk. It's oftentimes about both of us. So what I say is the best way is going to be through as my niece says, the old person's social media, which is going to be Facebook. I am Pam Fisher on Facebook, but follow me, please. I'm at that Maximum Capacity Friends. I put a lot out on Facebook, because if people don't see you, how do they know what you're doing, right? I'm leaning into some of the other ones with some TikTok eventually and Instagram, but today it's Facebook. And then the second way is message me through Facebook. I have one other website beyond my vhvisionhomes.com called cashflowformula.com, cashflowformula.com. That is sort of where I do presentations and do some consulting and then do work with some lenders out there. But between those two places, I should be able to connect. vhvisionhomes.com, Facebook, and then Cash Flow Formula.
Awesome. I'll make sure all those links are in the show notes so that anybody who wants to reach out to Pam, she is a wealth of knowledge worth having a conversation with. And if you have any mobile home parks that are for sale, let her know.
That's right.
Thank you again, Pam. It was wonderful having you on. And we look forward to talking to you on the next podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Loren. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Loren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.